As we see tensions rise between Israel and Iran, many are concerned that we may see World War III break out. The Islamic Republic has continued its offensive against Israel, launching rockets and attack drones into the Jewish state. The U.S. is backing Israel, while Vladimir Putin and Russia is supporting Iran. Now, to chat about this in more detail is our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari from the Foreign Desk, who joins us once again from Los Angeles. Lisa, first of all, you want to make it known that it's not Iran that's at war with Israel, but the Islamic Republic. Can you explain?
Yes. So for years, we've been trying to make this differentiation. And at this moment is probably the most important moment to make that differentiation. The reason why we differentiate between Iran, meaning the people, the history, the culture, the civilization of the Persian Empire, Iran, and the Islamic Republic is because not only is Israel at war with the government of Iran, the people of Iran are also at war with their government. So they don't want to be associated with this war. They're not at war with Israel. They're not at war with the United States. And for 45 years, the people of Iran have been the victims of this regime. Just like right now, the rest of the Middle East, particularly Israel, is at war with the government in Iran. So for that reason, we make the differentiation. In terms of strategy, we've also emphasized this differentiation because it would be a loss to the free world to abandon the people of Iran, who could be a great ally for us in this fight against extremism, against terrorism, against the government that funds all the terror proxies in the Middle East and is responsible for much of the global crises we're seeing right now.
Now, Lisa, it appears as though the Iron Dome is doing its job in protecting Israelis from that terrible attack over the weekend. Now, Israel's war cabinet is divided on how to respond to the massive aerial attack. They reportedly agreed to respond to the action, but differed on the timing and scale of such a measure.
Right. So within the initial hours of the attack, Israel's war cabinet met and they agreed across the board to, of course, respond to such an attack in the scale in which the Islamic Republic launched over 300 weapons into Israel. So now the question is how and when. So, of course, again, they are in agreement about there must be a response to such an act of war. But now, again, when will it be? How will it be? Will they go after their nuclear sites, military sites? Will they go after their proxies? They have many choices because of the way that the regime has expanded its influence throughout the region.
Now, with Vladimir Putin supporting Iran and the United States supporting Israel, Lisa, could we potentially see another world war? I mean, U.S. President Joe Biden has apparently already told Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that the U.S. will not join a counterstrike against Iran.
Right. And you wonder sometimes why they say these parts out loud. It's not a good look in terms of optics for our friend Israel to believe that they don't have the United States' support, and for our enemies, the Islamic Republic, to know that as well. Look, no one really, the players here that are involved don't really have an appetite for a war. Obviously, Israel doesn't want a war. They never did. They didn't want one on October 7th, and they don't certainly want one now. With regards to Iran's regime, they are egotistical. They are rogue, but they are not suicidal. So they wouldn't want to take this war any further to escalate. As a matter of fact, within hours after they did this, the 300 weapons into Israel, they went to the United States, the United Nations mission, and said, "Oh, okay, we're done. That was our retaliation. No more. We don't want an escalation." So a cowardly move, right? To say that, that was it. We don't want an escalation. They wanted to flex their muscles. They wanted to say that we're not going to take that attack in Damascus. We're not. We're going to have the final say. And here is the retaliation. Thank goodness, as you said, Israel's security apparatuses in three different layers. Obviously, the Iron Dome, David's Sling, and the Arrow are three different levels of protection for Israel. And of course, thank goodness, with the help of the United States, the UK, Saudis, Jordanians, they all rolled up their sleeves and said, "We're prepared. We're going to stop these missiles and drones from getting into Israel." And they did. As a matter of fact, 99% of them were blocked and did not come into the country. So now the question is, where do we go from here? Will this escalate? You mentioned Russia. I just want to mention one thing to the viewers. Russia is a selfish participant. So when they say that they're backing Iran, they will back the Islamic Republic if that's what is in their best interest. But they're not getting involved in yet another war if it's not going to be in their best interest to move forward with their agenda.
Yeah, they're very busy in Ukraine as it is right now with a
Mhm.
lot of their military. Lisa, the Islamic Republic in Iran has said it will launch even more attacks against Israel if the Jewish state responds. What would that actually look like?
Right. So again, this is a lot of that rhetoric, right? A lot of that chest thumping that we have seen from the regime in the same at the same moment when they delivered that message to the United Nations saying, we're done, we're not going to move any further. Inside the country, a mural went up saying the next slap in the face will be much harder. Writing it in Persian and in Hebrew. Funny that they would put that in Hebrew inside Iran. And also inside their state media, they were reporting a fourth wave of weapons will be going inside towards Israel. Meaning, look, they want to flex their muscles. They have a lot of different audiences here to impress, right? Inside the country, obviously, we know there's a lot of disenchantment. So flexing their muscles, trying to get people to rally around the flag, it's not going to work. The Iranian people are not supporting this war whatsoever. They want to also flex to their proxies to say, look, we are the godfather of terrorism. We're the ones supporting you. So look at us, watch us. We're the example. So they're trying to, again, impress their proxies. And lastly, deliver a message to the West, the big Satan, the United States, and the little Satan, Israel, which they believe is the United States' little side Zionist project. And they have called out these two enemies from the first day the Ayatollah Khomeini came into power in 1979. These were the two sworn enemies. So they're just trying to double down on their ideology, double down on their agenda. But I don't think they have an appetite to escalate this if it were in their hands.
A lot of talk on social media is that Joe Biden's easing of sanctions on Iran has contributed to the most recent attacks, including the U.S. government releasing billions upon billions of dollars in previously frozen assets.
Right. So from the time that Joe Biden was campaigning, even before he got into the White House, he said he was going to get back into the Iran deal. And what did that mean? That means appeasement. That means removing vital sanctions. That means allowing Iran to sell weapons to Russia, allowing them to sell oil to China, allowing them to, go on and fund all of their terror proxies. And that's exactly what we have seen in the last almost 4 years. So yes, most recently during this war, so since October 7th, the Biden administration released another $10 billion waiver to Iran's regime. So it's really playing both sides here, allowing Iran to, or the Islamic Republic to get a different message. So while on the surface, you saw Joe Biden tell the Iran regime, don't. On the other hand, they're doing a lot to appease them and give them a lot of wiggle room in terms of their own economy and their military economy. So that's why a lot of people believe that this was, in fact, part of the White House's plan to appease the Islamic Republic, and that's what brings us to today.
Lisa, you remember a number of years ago when the United States government and the military took out Saddam Hussein in Iraq. Has there been any talk about potentially removing the Islamic Republic in Iran?
Right. So, there isn't an appetite in Washington, D.C. for any administration, Republican or Democrat, to use the phrase regime change. That feels, the United States feels like that is a stain on our history and that we shouldn't engage in regime change. But as you saw, if you juxtapose the administrations, whether it was President Obama and then President Trump and then again President Biden, Obama and Biden being more similar in their appeasement of Iran, removing sanctions, letting them off the hook, and you see the results of that, the consequences of that. And then President Trump, while he stopped short of calling for regime change in Iran, he called for behavioral change. And he had what he called the pressure campaign, which was to put vital sanctions, very targeted sanctions on the sectors of the regime that pertained to their nuclear program and their banking and cash and oil sales that would actually choke the regime to a place where we saw the people of Iran as a result of that be able to come out onto the streets and feel like they had a place where the regime was suffering and that they could then come out and be that tipping point. Look, it will require both. It will require pressure from the West, and it will require the people of Iran to stand up in a grassroots movement against their government.
Late last week, the European Union imposed sanctions of its own on Hamas and Islamic Jihad for the sexual abuse of Jewish women during the October 7th massacre in southern Israel, Lisa. But what difference will this actually make to a terrorist group such as Hamas?
Right, and especially when their pockets are already being filled, and will continue to be filled. Look, 6 months after the war, we have to wait 6 months for there to be sanctions on an actual terror group, and we know that they're a terror organization. So then the question begs, why would the Biden administration, for example, take the Houthis, another proxy of Iran's regime inside Yemen? Why would they take them off the terror list when coming into office? Why would we play footsie with Hezbollah and Hamas and Iran's regime when we know what they're up to? Um, a lot of questions here. The fact that they're being sanctioned right now, that's great. But what took such a long time? There have been movements by different activist groups inside Canada, inside the United States, to make sure that the Islamic Republic and its tentacles, the individuals pertaining to these different groups, are not allowed to come into our countries, are not allowed to do business with our countries, and that the sanctions remain both on the country, meaning the government, and the individuals who are traveling freely throughout the world and spreading this disease of jihadism. So again, it requires a review here of all of our governments, Europe, Canada, the United States, to take a look here and say, what will our Iran policy be going forward? How will we deal with the Islamic Republic in the aftermath of this war so that they are not, they don't have the confidence to launch yet another war? Look, Israel should not be punished because it has this technology, right? So a lot of people are telling Israel to show restraint. Yes, thank God nobody got hurt, but that war that was launched by Islamic Republic was meant to cause casualties. It was meant to cause damage inside Israel. It was meant to start a war with Israel. So we can't excuse that just because Israel has the proper technology to protect itself. We have to ask ourselves, why does Israel have that technology? Because it needs that technology, because it knows that there are so many existential threats surrounding it on a daily basis.
Now, speaking of wars, the war between Ukraine and Russia is now more than 2 years old, Lisa. Let me ask you, is there any end in sight, any talk of a ceasefire or peace talks?
It doesn't look that way, but look, the money's running out, the weapons are running out, and look, if I were Russia, if I were Putin, I would watch what's going on in the rest of the world, particularly in the Middle East, and say, you know what, it's a free for all. I could do whatever I want. I would think the same thing if I were China, looking at Taiwan and waiting for that to happen. Uh, Weakness begets all of these different crises. And I think that we have to, again, here in the West, review our policies and review our foreign policies, which again should not differ from administration to administration. That is the one thing that keeps stability around the world, particularly in the Middle East, is that very strong deterrence, a predictable foreign policy that allows our friends to know where they stand, allow our enemies to know where they stand. And again, I don't think we would be in this situation had we had a stronger foreign policy.
Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida is headed to the White House on Wednesday to meet with U.S. President Joe Biden. Now, Lisa, many would argue that Japan is fast becoming the U.S.'s most important ally. I tell you, a lot has changed since the Second World War.
Yeah, right. Japan is building up its military. It got the memo. It's seeing itself in a more precarious situation every single day, being in the region with China, with North Korea, and allowing itself the opportunity to work with the United States because of these threats. And that's exactly what we're seeing. They have worked very quickly to build up that military, and I think right now what we're seeing is these two countries getting closer and closer together in cooperation. A lot of aligned interests there.
You know, over the weekend, I was on social media and I saw a lot of these boats arriving on the shores of Southern California, illegal immigrants. They hop off the boat, abandon, leave it there, and run into waiting cars, and away they go, they take off. People are like, have these people been vetted? Like, what's going on? And it just continuously. So a lot of illegal immigrants and mass immigration in the southern shores in the United
Yeah,
States.
it's awful, and it really it's a disservice to everyone involved. Whether it's those migrants, the benign ones who are getting taken advantage of by the coyotes and others in the process of coming over. There's illness, there's disease, they're getting raped, they're getting robbed. all of that. Then we talk about the ones that cannot be vetted and should be vetted. You know how many people, we've reported on this at the foreign desk, have showed up in our country and are on the FBI's most wanted list. Let's talk about the ones who aren't on the most wanted list and should be. We'll find out soon enough. There have been so many crimes committed by undocumented migrants who are coming over. Obviously, we cannot vet them. We don't even know where they're coming from, and a majority of them are, well-intentioned but can't be absorbed by this country, and they end up, unhoused and unemployed. Look, the American dream is the American dream for a reason, and those who come over with the proper process get to enjoy those opportunities. But the way that things are going right now, it's a lose-lose for everyone involved.
But where's the U.S. Coast Guard to intercept a lot of these illegal migrants who are coming on shore?
Right, and we've seen interviews with Border Patrol and others, those authorities that are entrusted with that to protect the borders, and they throw their hands up. This is something that has overwhelmed the system, and unless things change in terms of policy, they will not be able to do their jobs, and that's the very unfortunate thing that we're watching unfold.
Political reporter and foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari, thanks again for joining us today from Los Angeles.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.